Welcome back to the Ubuntu show number 4, building the perfect Ubuntu Linux PC for the masses. On the panel tonight, I have my returning champions. I have Ben, Dan, Joe. I have a thumbnail of somebody picking his nose. I don't know who that is. I got Paul. I got Sam. I got Steve, Vince, and myself, Carmine. This is Total OS Today, total technology for beginners and beyond. Welcome all. So,
by the way,
thank you.
The guy picking his nose is Matthew Moore.
Oh, okay. That's a heck of a thumbnail. No, that's not a reflection of Ubuntu, you know. But welcome everybody here. So this is show number 4 in my journey, quest, discussion, dream, speculation of having Ubuntu as a national or global Linux desktop for the masses. Briefly, we have machines for Windows users that start relatively inexpensive. Then you go all the way up to expensive Macs. We have nothing in between, at least not yet. So it would be nice to walk into a store, Walmart, Best Buy, even a grocery store, and have an Ubuntu box, an Ubuntu machine for about $400 US. Some simple just to get started, so a consumer, so mom and pop, has an alternative, a choice between something cheap and something super expensive. So for tonight, I jotted down some notes. What I think the quote-unquote perfect Ubuntu desktop or laptop should be. And I do see people in the chat. Welcome everybody in the chat room. I'll try to say hello to everybody as we go along. So I just did it the old-fashioned way. I just jotted down some notes on the quote-unquote perfect machine, and then we'll just go from the panel left to right here. So I wrote down quad-core, 4 GB of RAM, 256 solid-state drive. Really, you could do with 120, but we'll say 256. 2 HDMI out ports for dual monitors, 4 USB ports, no disk drive, Wi-Fi would be fine, 5-year support. You know, after that you're on your own, but just let the customer know up front on how this works. 30-day money-back guarantee, and let's say you buy the machine, you can upgrade it to a maximum of 8 GB of RAM. You won't need that to run Linux generally, but let's say that the machine comes with 4 gigs, 2 gig sticks, upgradable to 8 maximum. Maybe have a slot, a bay for a disk drive if you want to put one in. But we'll just say does not come included. So we're looking for a balance between consumer value and profitability for the company. Whoever builds it, they do have a right to make a profit, and the consumer has a right to get a fair deal. So we're looking for that something in between, and that's why I have these fairly modest specs for the first Ubuntu machine starting off. Once it starts to sell, if it sells, and we can move on to a higher rig, a gaming machine, a Mac type Ubuntu machine for $2,000 or more. But I think just to get started, because the masses will have no clue what Ubuntu is. Maybe they've heard of it, and once you mention Linux, they're like, oh gee, like another geeky machine. Can't blame them. But if they take it home and it works the way they were told how it works, I think it will stick. So Ben, to my left, what say you? Hello, Ben.
Sorry. Okay.
No, the other Ben.
My opinion on the perfect Ubuntu machine for the masses would be, it comes with 1804.2 pre-installed, of course. The XFCE or the Mate edition, because I don't want to give somebody GNOME. That's like shooting fish in a barrel too hard. I mean, honestly, you know, I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, sure, we could customize it, make it look nice and pretty, give them a bunch of cool extensions, whatever. But to me, Ubuntu is for somebody who wants a Mac interface, not a Windows interface, because 99% of the population is using Windows and only 2% market share is Linux right now. If we want to grow the user base and the et cetera, we got to have a common standard. I mean, we can't just throw, you know, we can't throw GNOME on there and expect them to live with it.
Isn't GNOME kind of the common?
Well,
Sorry.
Well, I wouldn't say that because, I mean, sure, it could be, but I mean, newbie users, let's remember this is a newbie show, so, I mean, GNOME to me is more of a power user interface. I mean, and I don't believe in throwing a power user interface on a newbie user. That's just totally illogical.
Ben, you make a good point. I would say a modified notion of modified version of GNOME. A couple like this morning, I did a podcast running from Ubuntu with dash to panel. Everything is at the top, or you can have it at the bottom.
Yeah,
something simplified. Yeah,
and that's fine, but that's for a Mac user again, and majority of the population of this world is used to Windows. It's just a common fact. And GNOME is not that. I mean, sure, you could modify it to tweak it to look that way, but a simple user is going to go, what the F is this? When they boot it up.
I think having either, like in my Ubuntu Mate, everything is at the top. I can move it to the bottom.
Yeah,
that's a Windows user mentality easily.
I mean,
if Ubuntu is modified,
Yeah, if Ubuntu is modified and they brought it home, or even wanted to bring it home at some point, they would want a panel at the bottom. It's just that'll
work. Not a problem. I'm sure just with the right click, move to the bottom, done. Yeah.
Right, and that's what they want. They want simple click, 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 click. That's it. They don't want to think about going into a TTY command line.
Fair enough. All right, Ben, number 2. What say you?
All right, they're going to want totally compatible hardware, and Intel can do that. Not Broadcom. I'm not throwing Broadcom in the mix. I'm just not. Because Broadcom, as us Linux users know, is a pain in the behind. It's just always that way, unless you get some high-level, high-powered power user coder in this mix, we're just going to always have that problem unless you get a high-powered, kick-ass coder in the mix.
Okay. Let's move on to the other. Sorry, Ben. Let's move on to the other, Ben. We have 2 Bens in the house. I know it's getting a little bit. Let's go on to the second Ben.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just giving a good sense.
Thank you.
I think I agree with Ben Fitzpatrick there on a few things. GNOME can be kind of unstable. Every update, the extensions break and all that stuff. But I also think that the main consumer, unfortunately, flashiness is in. And if they see while Mate and XFC are very stable, and I would prefer them personally, I think if the average user sees that, they'll say, what is this, Windows 95 or Windows XP? They're looking for something more modern. Unfortunately, that does play a huge role in the way they think. So, I mean, I think that as long as, let's say the Ubuntu team decides to create and maintain a few extensions of their own, and they maintain them well, and keep them stable. They could really get GNOME to look and feel, and they can make it stable, and they can say, look, these are the extensions that we support. You can put others on there, but they might not work. They might break. These are the ones that we support, and Canonical should support them themselves.
Okay. All right. So let's get into the actual machine specs of hardware versus the software, and that's those are legit concerns and opinions about the software. What about the machine itself?
Well, I think that again, I agree. Shame on the companies that don't make their drivers for Linux or open them up, but this is the hand that we've been dealt, and so I think that for at least the time being, whoever takes up the undertaking of building this machine has to make sure that everything is compatible with Linux 100%. That means, like Ben just said, no Broadcom Wi-Fi. Maybe be careful with the NVIDIA. NVIDIA could be a pain.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention real quick: no Optimus hardware, no dual graphics. That's just going to kick the person in the nuts.
Oh yeah, that was a pain.
Yeah, no Optimus, no AMD dual graphics, no nada. Just a 2 cents.
All right, Dan, what say you?
On the GNOME thing, okay, I don't have a problem with it as far as if we're going to put the Ubuntu, let's say, on a small notebook or a tablet or a phone, because there are tablets like an iPad or a Samsung tablet or even the iPhone that I use is very GNOME-ish to begin with, minus the icons flying out of the corner. They're already up on the screen anyways. So for that, the masses is probably already used to that on a tablet or a phone. Now, when you get to a larger notebook or a desktop, I agree with Ben. You know, it should be more like a Mate or a Windows type, you know, operating system with some kind of usability to it in that aspect. The hardware, I think if you're really going to make a Ubuntu machine, you need to lock down some agreements with some hardware manufacturers in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way. That's a good
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, we have to get some licensing contracts and stuff like that all worked in. So when you throw this thing all together, you ain't got a bomb that goes out and has to be pulled back in and redone over again.
Well, let me ask Jojo. I know you build Linux machines. What about these specs that I mentioned? Do you think that this is a fair balance between profitability and value?
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. Some of the specs you described in today's world now are actually a little light. 4 gigs, I think, is actually even light by today's standards. What I mean by that is you can still get a $400 machine with 8 gigs of RAM on it. Whether you feel it's necessary or not, it's future-proofing a little bit.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
8 gigs of RAM would be a better sweet spot, or even 6.
Okay.
Now, again, let's not think of it just as a laptop either. You know, we talk about desktop as well. The other thing is quad core would be equivalent of like maybe an i3 or even an i5, depending on what level. Because that's the other thing too. Many people don't realize they see i3, i5, i7 from the Intel side, and they assume that there's only those 3 levels. But when in fact, in those certain hardware, you could have 4 or 5 or 6 different i3 chips. Same thing with i5. Same thing with i7. You know, there's different levels of those chips that are put into this different hardware. So, of course, the sweet spot getting down to that $400 mark. Do you have to have the bottom of the barrel one? Not necessarily. Same thing with the AMD. AMD is known to be more for your bang for your buck. So you, in theory, could get maybe a 6 or possibly an 8 core, depending on when this would come about in today's world. As far as the hardware, like we were talking pre-show here too, I think what's going to happen, whether it's you could talk about GNOME, you could talk about all these other ones. A lot of people think it should all be Windows-esque because that's what people are used to. Well, no, if somebody's making a total change, I don't know that it matters definitely what it is. It's got to work better. What I don't like about GNOME, and the reason why I'm bringing it up from the software side is, every time you turn around, they're stripping something out of it, and it affects the workflow. Now, if you're going to look at it from a workflow standpoint to work with your hardware, I mentioned earlier tonight, the distro that we were supposed to be trying for Biddle, Makulo. It's a beautiful looking distro, but it's a little
too much.
My liking,
it's too much, yeah.
Somebody coming as a newbie.
It's a lot, yeah. It's
and the
slick.
touchscreen support didn't seem to work as well. Now, a lot of people have the opinions. Okay, you got a touchscreen. How many people were using touchscreen? There are some that do.
Yeah.
And so whatever you get is going to have to play nice with touchscreen as well, whether they get it or not. The thing that we talked about here as well too earlier was whoever manufactures this is going to have to be in touch with Canonical and say, here is the hardware we're moving to. Here's the specs it's going to be. Do your thing to make it work with this before we put it out there. And that are we going to guarantee that there's never going to be a break? Absolutely not. Will it hopefully reduce breaks? Yes, definitely, because now you've done your pre-testing before it gets released. In theory, that's what a lot of the updates are that come through on Linux anyway are supposed to do. But we all know that sometimes you get a kernel update, and next thing you know, it's breaking something pretty significantly. That can happen. As long as you have a process to revert back or a safety net in that order, I think you'll be fine with it. Again, the laptop I keep reverting back to, which is the most recent one I bought, was the Dell Inspiron 3567. It's now going on almost a year old. I got a deal on that. That was a $400 laptop out of the gate. To your reference about the disk drive, there are people that still like to put a disk in, even though everybody says there's no use for it. There is.
True.
Not just for music, but there's other.
Yes.
And here's the other reason why I liked it in there, because first of all, those disk drives are they're pennies in today's market. First thing I did when I got it, avoided the warranty. I pulled the disk out. I ordered a tray for it. I put an SSD tray. I put an SSD in it, put it back in there. You had to switch the cover over. It looks like it's still in there, but I am able to now dual boot from 2 separate drives without having to take the whole computer apart. It was one screw on the back to release the caddy out of it. So if things are thought ahead that way for this, I think that, and that's from a laptop standpoint. From a desktop, I mean, the sky's the limit. I'm on an AMD system right now with as I described earlier, that's got a dedicated graphics card. I've got a Ryzen 1600 in here. I've got a nice modular power supply. I've got an oversized cooler. I've got, all the drivers loaded up. And I'm not going to say I never have a problem, but for the most part, it's been pretty rock solid, and 90% of the time is when somebody gets into this, if they start getting into the enthusiast level or really get into it, yeah, can you break something? Sure. But from an entry-level machine like we're talking about for the masses, there's a lot of things out there already. All they have to do is just dedicate to the user that they're trying to target, market it that way, and go from there. Now, the distro itself, yeah, we know that everybody in the Linux world who's been familiar with it, the majority, I'm not going to say all, the majority are not fond of GNOME. I've used GNOME in the past, even in my earlier days, thought it was very pretty, but I didn't stay on it because I have a certain workflow feel I like to be with. And I don't think it always plays, even though it's tablet looking, I don't think it plays as nice with even touchscreen hardware like it should. One of the most common complaints, which the way around it, and it takes a bit to figure it out, you have to stumble on it, is when you want to open up, when you want to bring the dash to dock up, you want to bring the apps up, you tap it and it flickers on a tap screen. What it is it wants you to hold it for 3 or 4 seconds, then it comes up and then you can do your thing. Is it a nuisance? You better believe it. How many people out of the back, they're going to think the thing's broke, they're going to send it back, whatever. So, those are the things that have to be perfected. But the long and short of it, to sum up, is the manufacturer has to dedicate the hardware they want to use on this stuff. Yeah. They need to be talking to Canonical, and everybody will be in tune with each other. And that's what it comes down to.
Well, these specs that I jotted down, again, this would be the starting point. I mean, this doesn't have to be the law. But let's say Canonical approves this with 6 gigs of RAM and a disk drive, and that's as far as they can go to make it profitable. I'd be cool with that. Yeah. Just as long as it comes out of the gate, no bugs, or as close to it has to work the way it was intended. Somebody typed in 10 years support. I believe it's 5 years free with Ubuntu and the extra 5 years paid, if I am not mistaken. It's not.
Another
10
thing
years
is
free.
It's got to be a little different than a Chromebook too to make it appealing. It's got to be a different choice, not just a Chromebook.
Right, and it has to look a little snazzy. It has to have that look. I mean, for me, I'm not into looks that much when it comes to machines. But yeah, to have a modified version, I mean, GNOME by itself, standard GNOME does look pretty sharp. But it does have to be a little bit modified to make it more Windows-ish, user-friendly. And then once it's modified with really a couple extensions is all you need, you're good to go, in my opinion.
But 10 years support is important, though, Carm, because when you think about it, I mean, Windows has been 10 years for everything, too. And if we have a dedicated system, I don't think 10 years, asking for 10 years is out of the question for something like that.
I don't think if Canonical or whoever gives free 10-year support, I don't think for a low-end machine, I don't think that's profitable in my opinion. The only
reason Windows gives 10 years support's because they have enterprise version and they have to support that for 10 years. And it's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, but here's the point with that, though. Just because you're giving the 10-year support doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be taken advantage of. Most people are going to be switching machines out before that. They really are. most people aren't going to be looking, believe it or not, to the manufacturer for the support. They're going to be looking to users groups, whatever.
Right.
It's really it's interesting how many times you have a warranty on something and how many people really use it. It's a market.
Agreed. But again, I'm thinking as a consumer, as a businessman, where's the balance? You have a 30-day money-back guarantee, 1-year guarantee on the whole machine, 5 years free support. If you go beyond that, I just don't think, and you got to be upfront with the consumer. You know, this is a low-end machine. This is how we do things. We're giving you a choice. But to go beyond 5, look, if it's profitable, give it 10 years. If it's not, then don't do it. Just don't. Tell them up front, we can't do it.
Well,
now,
then
how about 7 years?
If that's the case, even if you did 5 years and they have to charge for extended support, don't be ridiculous with the cost either. Because
I would approve that.
And here's the reason why I'm going to say that. Once you know, from a hardware and a builder standpoint. Here's where the money's made in this stuff. They say, oh, you get 1 year with the machine. You could buy 3 years for an extra whatever they charge, 175, 200, whatever, 300. I've seen prices all over the place, right?
Yeah.
You know, especially Mac. Most of this hardware comes with longer than 1 year support anyway. Everything that's in this machine. I've got a power supply in here that's got 6 year support. I've got a motherboard in here that's got 3 year support. So the reality of it is the manufacturer puts out, of these parts, a 3-year warranty, a 6-year warranty, whatever it is. Dell or whoever's manufacturing these things is taking advantage of that. They're charging you money for the support that you already should be getting because it's part of what the manufacturer offers. But nobody's going to know that because they don't build their own system. Now, you build your own system, you're going to know it.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? That's where money's made. In a lot, and same thing with a car. It's a lot of it's the extended warranty stuff that you pay. So,
selling an extended warranty, that's reasonable as an option. If the customer's told before they buy it, I have no problem with that. You know, we need to eliminate all the confusion and the possible BS with something like this at the point of purchase up front, because once that 30 days is passed, if they don't like it, they cannot return it. They can sell it if they wish or install Windows on it if you want, but you'll never get a second chance to make a good first impression. 10 years ago or so, Walmart tried to sell a Green OS machine, Linux machine. Oh my God, it was awful. Yeah, that was just stupid. It was just plain. I'll just say it was just, forget about it. It was
That's
stupid.
why I brought up the fact is that they should have this all put in writing before they even build it. So everything is supported all right up to a certain date, and then after that, you know, and I think for the software updates, 7 years is not unreasonable. 10 might be.
Again, that can be worked out. Again, but all of that can be in the intro video.
Now,
what is Linux? What is Ubuntu? This is the hardware. Here's the warranty. Hello and goodbye. And
the software that comes with it, like LibreOffice and GIMP and stuff like that, you can't really guarantee that for anything. That's, you know, separate all on its own. But, you know, the core base security updates, you can go out 7 years on that.
You probably could. You probably could. Let's move on. Paul, welcome. What say you? Unmute yourself. You're muted. Okay.
Am I unmuted?
You're good to go, my friend.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Roll them.
Yeah. I think 10-year support is too long, really. I mean, but as far as the hardware, $400, I think it's going. I don't know if can a manufacturer, Joe would probably have a better idea, but can somebody build a computer with 4 gig of RAM and a 240 gig hard drive for $400 and make any money on it?
Recently, for a organization here in town, for $200, and it had 4 gigs. So there are possibilities to build it with, of course, when RAM was through the roof with the video cards and everything else last year, that was a whole different animal. But even at that, I still did it during that time. So yes, I mean there's a possibility to build these $400 machines with, 1 terabyte drive maybe and 8 gigs of RAM in the right marketplace and things like that. But yeah, so sorry.
Yeah, I think, but if you're going to have Ubuntu, 4 gigs is a minimum. you got to at least have 4 gig. Otherwise, they're going to get a mediocre experience from the
Well,
machine.
I'm hoping that if and when they actually produce it, they've gone through the performance enhancements with the GNOME desktop, and it'll be just as fast as, say, Ubuntu Mate or Linux Mint, where you really would not need more. Look, if they build a machine and it takes just as much RAM as Windows, then what's the point? Obviously. But if they make it as efficient as, say, Ubuntu Mate or Linux Mint, yeah, 4 gigs is good. I think it's enough for most people. Yeah, now, I won't do 4K video rendering, obviously, but that's not the machine for it either. So, you know.
Well, I would say, like, I'll be clear now. Like, Windows 10 will make any desktop environment look like i3, like resource taking wise. Like, as far as it goes, like GNOME and KDE, like the heaviest hitters, I think they're lightweight compared to Windows 10.
I don't think GNOME is lighter than Win 10 in my opinion. I think it's about the same.
Oh. Windows 10
could be all the difference in the world too. And if Windows you sacrifice a little bit of storage, you know, maybe it's a 250 gig SSD, because that would be comparable to a 1 terabyte in today's market for storage for price. But as time passes, by the time this ever happens, hopefully it's sooner than later, you know, you're going to get more for your money too. But that SSD in itself kind of makes up the difference too. That's one other piece of hardware we didn't touch on.
That's what I was just going to say. Windows 10 on a spinning drive is horrendous, but you put it on a solid state drive and it's just as fast as any, or pretty close to as fast as.
Well, I would want this Ubuntu machine to have a solid state drive. Yeah. So.
Definitely.
And it depends on the machine. This stuff doesn't have to be all independent parts. It all can be put on one circuit board with, you know, permanently, or chip manufacturers can choose to put the RAM in with the processor. That's coming out like next year. They're going to start integrating stuff like that, because some of the computers are now built with the graphics built into the processor.
Yes. Yeah.
Now would these also have some kind of recovery partition?
Sure.
I would think that would be a good idea.
Why not?
You could add that.
Especially if it has proprietary drivers. You'd want to have some kind of recovery partition, especially for, you know, for someone who's...
Thumb drives are so cheap now, they could throw a 256 megabyte or whatever thumb drive in a box with the computer that has the operating system and its software on it.
Right, like with Clonezilla or something like that.
Just the whole operating system and all the software that it's shipped with.
And that could be packaged as, by the way, this computer comes with a bonus, a backup system for you on the, you know, USB, or, you know, something like that for the newbie customer. You know, that could be worked out, you know, to make it more.
And you throw in a thumb drive with it, with the system on it, then you don't have the problem if your hard drive fails.
Right.
Not like now, you have to contact the manufacturer to get a copy of the operating system to reinstall. Like Windows.
Do that. You can download the creative media.
That's true too.
Media creation, excuse me, and build the, just burn the ISO and reinstall it. But it's the activation that it'll recognize the motherboard stuff. So that's where they're going with it. But it's still extra processes versus just going into your cabinet and pulling a drive out and sticking it in.
Okay.
Right.
Let's get Steve
what if it's your
in
only
here.
computer and you don't have access to the internet if that's your only system? It'd be nice to have that thumb drive.
The thumb drive you get with it comes in.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could burn that right after you get it. In theory, most people, they tell you get a restore disk ready to go before you do anything with it as soon as you get the machine. All right,
or utility like MX has, where you can actually create an ISO.
Now remember, you think like a newbie. Think like a person who goes Ubuntu. You got to think that way. Okay. Right. Yes, this machine is made by for you. Yeah. All right. Okay, Steve, go.
Yes. Okay. Well, a little story. When I was getting my new computer, when I ordered it, I did a lot of research, and I wish I knew I was going to be doing something like this one day in the future, because I didn't keep any of the how I went and did my research. But I researched my motherboard, my all the main systems to things that would work with Ubuntu. My system has not failed me since I've had it, and since I've had Peppermint on it. Newbie's not going to do that, but anybody that's going to be building these machines will have that ability. And then also, so I paid like around $600 for mine, but that was still much less than if I went out and bought it with everything on it, because I bought it from a bare bones outfit. You got an outfit that's building these desktops. They're going to, have a lot of, discounts, because they'll be mass purchasing all the, motherboards and chips and all that. So that's going to bring down the price. But the manufacturer is going to know exactly what really works. I mean, it works for System 76, it works for Dell, and a couple other these little companies that are putting together computers for Ubuntu. I think if someone really puts their mind to it, they can make a good, and I won't even call it a mid-range desktop for a very decent price to get the mom and pop to start using it.
I'm looking at the chat. And welcome everybody in the chat. We have someone who calls himself all kinds of things. That's a great name for a PC, by the way. Who on earth would choose a PC with Ubuntu installed when they can choose Windows 10? That's kind of like choosing a horse and cart instead of a Rolls Royce. Well, has an update broken your system lately? Do you like telemetry? Do you like rebooting 5 or 6 times to do updates? Which is the horse and cart and which is the Rolls Royce, right?
Yes, I've been using Ubuntu Mate now for about 4 or 5 months, and I haven't even had to reboot the computer for an update once.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Windows 10, when it works, it is beautiful. Totally agree. And even when updates takes forever, it still works. But Windows 10 is not a fun OS like Windows 7 was. It just feels bloated, and that's what I don't like about it. Does it work? Yeah. Is it stable? Yeah. Well, it has to be stable. I mean, how can you sell them a machine? People are not going to go to the Walmart. Yeah, I'm looking for the unstable Windows machine. Thank you. I'll take that one. It doesn't work that way. So, all right, Vince from Australia. People down under seem to be smarter than us. What say you?
I'm not sure about smarter. It's good being last because now I don't have to think too much. But on the hardware side of things, I'll definitely say that $400 budget is plenty. It's plenty for probably something mid-range like a Core i5. And I'll definitely echo Joe's point about 8 gigs of RAM, because internet browsers these days are just so memory hungry. You've got to have at least, I reckon, 8. SSD, yeah, I think 128 is probably enough. I'd also probably include a separate spinning drive, like a terabyte or 2 terabyte spinning drive. I think that's doable for $400, so people can store all their data. I would definitely forego a dedicated graphics, because for what most people need to do, the integrated graphics these days is pretty much good enough. And if anyone who wants a dedicated graphics, they're probably going to be a gamer or a video producer or someone like that, and so they don't need to. I mean, they'll know what they're doing. They'll probably just go and buy something themselves. Yeah. And one last point I would make is to make it really snazzy and eye-catching, I would paint the box, the case, orange and black. I think that would be awesome with the big orange Ubuntu logos on the side. I think that would be great.
Something to catch attention. Maybe even glow-in-the-dark logo. How about that?
Well, LED light. Maybe the logo could have LEDs.
Spoken like a true Aussie, the orange and black.
Hey, it's the colors that are coming in. They're pretty fashionable, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the chat. Feed the horse and you have a loyal friend. The Rolls Royce will blow up one day.
But look at the AMD 2200G and the 2400G. 2200G is a $100 chip, and it's got lightweight Vega graphics on it right now that'll play a lot of decent games at medium to high, or excuse me, low and medium settings. So the point is even if you wanted to get into some graphical work and still have something that was similar to a dedicated card, that's an affordable chip that still could be put into a $400 machine. Matter of fact, there was a text came in pre-show. I walked a friend of mine in Ohio. He's in Cincinnati. He was building a Ryzen machine that I spec'd out with a 2200G, and the only thing that wasn't in this was a hard drive. I recommended an SSD, and that thing came out at $459. He decided to use 1 terabyte. Well, I sent him an SSD. So we're talking 450 range, but he's going to have a 500 gig SSD in there, and 2200G, a 450 watt semi-modular power supply, which costs a little bit more, so you could do a little better cable managing. Nice micro ATX case. So the point is you can do this. And he had 16 gigs of RAM too. So 3,000 megahertz RAM.
Okay.
Yeah, for the average person, I would definitely prioritize RAM over a dedicated graphics. I mean, these days, the most expensive component of a computer is probably dedicated graphics now.
Yeah. Again, what would be the balance between profitability and consumer value? At this point, I really don't know because we're all just speculating. And to that point, what percentage of profit would Canonical be looking at?
Now, if you're going to build it in a desktop box, most of the integrated graphics now, you can actually put a graphics card in and shut off the integrated if you want to go up to a gaming level.
Right.
Well, but I have one question. Like, let's say that we get the machine and it comes with a default 4 gigs of RAM, and we give it 10 years support. I mean, will a machine with 4 gigs of RAM still be usable 10 years down the road? I mean,
with the original operating system, I would think so. Yeah, I would say. I mean, I'm running in my older machine here Windows 10. It had a Windows 7 upgraded to Windows 10 with 4 gigs. It's usable.
Well,
can't do a lot, but it's usable.
Because I'm thinking web browser wise. Like those things tend to gobble up more RAM, more memory each year as it goes by, and so I'm thinking that like 4 gigs now, I think a web browser struggles.
Well, that's why I was saying 8 gigs a little bit more. But the other thing you have to remember, when you're talking a large proprietary company building these machines, they're not paying what you and I are. And if I could, even me as a small system builder, if I could build something for $400. Give or take, what can they build it for? There's a profit margin in there for them.
Right.
Exactly.
The question is, how much percentage of that profit are they looking for? I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. Again, without being at the chairman of the board meeting, okay, this is what we want. It has to be this, or we're not going to. Again, I don't know. These specs I wrote down. This has to be the bare minimum starting point, in my opinion. And then go up from there.
Yeah, we got to remember that 10,000 processors cost a heck of a lot more than or less.
That's true.
Buying just one.
Well, look, if it's a choice between we'll build a machine, we'll approve it, but you have a choice: 8 gigs of RAM or a disk drive. Pick one. I'd put the RAM in there.
Yes.
I'd pick the RAM too.
Yeah.
External drives are pretty cheap, so.
Right. I put there or have a slot a bay in there for someone to install one if they want to, but external drives are nothing. Right.
Yeah, with USB-C now out, I think that's twice as fast as USB 3, isn't it?
Say that again.
USB 3, I think the new C standard is twice as fast as the 3.
It's not twice as fast, but it's faster. Yeah,
okay.
Faster.
Okay.
The SSDs, I think, are probably just as critical too. Even if you started out with 128, gets a little bit tight, but again, it's
doable.
Buy, depending on the market time. Now, if you give an example, Black Friday. I mean, you could buy a 250 gig Crucial, which has got high ratings, MX 500, for probably $47. You could buy that same drive at Black Friday for probably 30. Or maybe even less, depending on hitting it at the right time. And there's a couple other times during the year too. So, depending on when you buy your parts and things like that. But these, as an example, even years ago when I was into, starting to build computers back then, you could go to an OEM manufacturer, you set up an account, and you buy multi-packs. Or you get now it's in today's world, it'd be subscription service for so many licenses. So volume always gets you a better price. And the other thing too is hard and fast fact, the money isn't being made on the hardware anyway. It really isn't. It's hopefully, in their minds, it's the data they can, now granted, the idea with the Ubuntu, you don't want them harvesting you for data. So there's other means. It's the aftermarket stuff. It's the replacement parts. It's the expansion. It's, whatever. There's other ways of bringing some money into this too, or getting you back as a repeat buyer. Instead of selling you one machine, let's sell you 10 machines over life or whatever,
Sure. Yeah.
Have you coming back.
Yeah.
So.
I posted a poll on the MeWe page. And this morning, when I did the morning podcast, Good Morning Ubuntu, and I asked, would you spend $400 for an Ubuntu machine? I think everybody said yes on this morning's poll. I don't know about me. I think there were a couple no's. So obviously, granted, it's a small group of people, but I think that's a hint of the possible demand for a machine like this. On this machine, I got 2 separate drives, one Windows 10 and then Ubuntu Mate. And I only go into Windows 10 nowadays when I have to. That says a lot how far Linux has gone. And when I go into Windows 10, I'm like, how long are these updates, And I should just do them at night. Just turn the machine on, hit update, okay, I'm going to bed, and not worry about it. But in Linux and Ubuntu, I've never, ever, ever once started an update. I'm going, oh God, how long would this take? It doesn't work. It's usually done within 5 minutes tops. And you have to reboot once. Ooh, God forbid, But it's more enjoyable. It just is.
Well, but I would venture to say that 180 gig solid state drive would be fine for most users because, our Ubuntu doesn't require 70 gigs to put aside just for updates.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
So it doesn't require them as much space, so I think that it would be.
Yeah, it doesn't even require a swap partition anymore. They just use a swap file.
Yeah, I've got a laptop with 2 Linux operating systems on it and a data partition, and it took 7 gigs to make a recovery flash drive. And that's with 2 OSs. With Windows, geez, you need a 64 gig probably just to do that.
I would have to say
data stored on the machine.
I'd have to say virtual machines eat up most of my hard drive more than anything.
Well, sure, especially with multiple OSs installed.
Tons of Linux distros.
Right. We have a thing in the chat. All kinds of things says, ironically, a Rolls-Royce would probably have Linux running the data like a Tesla. There you go. How true that is. Yes, CFWW, welcome. SSDs are coming down in price. That is true.
Yeah.
They are. So a Linux machine in this price range is, look, Google's making Chromebooks for $200 or less that work for what they were built to do. Granted, a very small solid-state drive, but what is it, 4 gigs of RAM, but that's all they need,
I think the Chrome OS, the Google tries to push you to use the Google Drive for extra storage.
True. Right. That's why they come generally with the smaller disk drives.
Yeah.
Right. Or the smaller SSD. Yeah.
But they give you like a year free, I think.
Okay.
And then you have to pay for it afterwards. So let's say you fill that cloud space up, but you can't afford you just can't access your storage anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
or lose it.
Well, look, they have a right to make a profit. I don't think they're making that much on the machine to start with, so they have a right to make a profit. So yeah.
I don't think they have a right to trick you, though.
Well, no. Obviously, they should tell you. I think they do, don't they? With the
I don't know. I don't own one.
Well,
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, the last Chromebook I worked on was a buddy's of mine, and I saw like the one of the stickers right on it said 1 year free, 100 gigs or 200 whatever of Google Drive space. And so like, what I would be worried about then is like, what if I fill that up, and then like a year later, I can't afford to pay it, and then boom, all my data's gone.
Well, then you had to sign up. There should be multiple warnings ahead of time. Like I'm getting email warnings. G Plus was going away. They should send you multiple warnings. Now, if you choose to ignore them, that's up to you.
Yeah, right.
You know.
I imagine they give you the option to download your stuff.
I would imagine, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem. Now, if you forget, well, that's your problem. Not that you signed up for. You knew what you were getting into. So.
I'm also thinking because like hard drives are pretty cheap now too.
Right.
So I mean, does it really have to be cloud storage, or can it be like a physical drive?
We have Rogue Engineer saying you can buy a Pixel and get unlimited a Pixel 3, the phone, and get unlimited Google Cloud storage. That's not the laptop though. That's the phone.
Keep in mind also there's many manufacturers now that are no longer making the spinning hard drives. What's out there for sale is just what's left in stock.
Right.
Manufacturing has ceased on those, at least for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, you could regularly pick up PNY spinning drive 120 gigs for $20-$25 on sale. I saw was it a 240 for $39.
Okay.
Yeah, because Western Digital came out with an announcement that they were going to stop making the 3.5 size spinning drives this year.
Probably keep doing server spinning drives though.
Well, they have the same thing equivalent in an SSD. And they claim that those are cheaper to manufacture than the spinning drives.
But I've also heard that when a solid state drive fails, that you really don't have any warning. Whereas with the spinning drive, typically you have warnings.
You don't with a solid state drive. When they go, they go.
Yeah,
that's the downfall.
When you have a server, you have them all set up in a RAID. So if one blows out, you just hot swap it.
Well, but I also hear the solid state drives, like when they go, but they very rarely go. You know.
No, they have a read-write cycle time limit that's pretty much they've ironed out is a good guess. And for most users, they'll last the life of the computer, as far as usability in today's world. But you'll have the occasional one that just poofs and goes out from a static shock or something.
That's why I say back up and back up again, no matter what you use, because you just never. There could be a lightning storm, fried.
Well, you figure like if you're a distro hopper and you're reinstalling different operating systems on one solid state hard drive, you figure how many times that thing's being read and written to.
Yeah.
They do have quite a lifespan.
Yeah, the chips do have a read and write life cycle,
but it's quite long.
Yeah,
it is. But you can eat it up pretty quick if you keep ripping stuff on and off it all the time. English Bob's been through a couple of them. He's always whining about something like that.
I just bought a new Samsung 860 EVO SSD, and it's got 600 total terabytes written. So 600 terabytes you can write onto it before it will fail.
I haven't had a solid state fail on me yet. So
yeah,
wow.
600 terabytes is a huge amount of data.
Huge,
yeah, I had a solid state drive, a Kingston 240 gig SSD come with this ThinkPad. It said it was brand new. I didn't pull it out until like a week ago when I started my Gen 2 experiment, and I pulled the hard drive out because I pulled both of my drives out. So I put another hard drive in the caddy. That's what I'm putting Gen 2 on. I'm not distro hopper or anything like that. But no, I pulled the Kingston out, the little SSD, and I was surprised at how tiny the thing was. That was my first time actually holding a solid state drive.
Did you hear what he said, Carm? Did you hear what he said?
Say again.
Caddy. Even the caddies have them.
Even the caddy, yeah. I don't think it was that.
No. The SSD's not in the caddy. The SSD's in like the regular drive. I got a regular spinning drive in the caddy.
Ben, if you're brave enough to actually open up the SSD, the actual will be a fraction of.
Well, I have a M.2 NVMe drive in my little cube workstation back there, and you're talking even a difference from this read-write of these SSDs of being 530s, 510, whatever they are, to 3500. read writes and stuff. So there and it's like a stick of gum. Years ago, in 2013, when I built my first gaming machine again, I hadn't built in years. I was looking at SSDs, and a 500 gig SSD was $990 something, and to buy them now, they're sub $100 depending on what you're buying. So yeah, and Samsung's got the most popular brands, so you're going to pay a little bit more for those. Crucial's been very good, but I've got probably a little bit of each. I got Crucial, I got Samsung, I've got PNY, I've got Western Digital Blue. Actually, they came out and they're getting pretty popular now too. So the downside, the only real downside to an SSD over a spinning drive, which theoretically the life of this hardware is supposed to be 75 years if you were constantly writing every day some massive amount of data. But it's a circuit board. And could they fail? Yeah. And if they fail, there's no warning like a spinning drive. That's the one downside to it. But they've perfected them so well. That's why, like Carm always says, back up, back up, back up.
You have a backup, it's not a problem, or it should not be a problem.
We want to go back to like talking about Google and their small drives and that. This is a little Asus netbook that I bought for my wife. It's got Windows 10 on it. It's got a 32 gig hard drive in there. It's the EM SSD, the real small circuit board type.
To stick a gum.
Thankfully I got it for my wife because she's not going to be downloading a whole mess of stuff and that, and it's always going to be clean. But yeah, it's 32 gigs, and I have to throw in a USB to update this on their major updates because it can't handle the update.
Yeah. There is such a thing as too small. The other thing too is like you were talking about earlier, Dan, about the games or all this, or the virtual machines. Excuse me. The truth of the matter is, you could. Well, I don't know if he's here or not. I can see his icon, but you can actually load your VMs on a separate storage drive as well too. And a lot of people don't do that. English Bob does it. As a matter of fact, he was in one of his videos recently talking about that.
I'm just learning how to conquer them things, as I'm going along.
Yeah. And there are some distros that don't like that.
I should probably delete most of them because most of them have been superseded by new ones that have just came out. Like I got Peppermint 8 still floating around on my SSD somewhere.
But long and short of this, like we're talking tonight, is it comes down to let's refer to Father of the Bride. Somebody at the hot dog factory needs to talk to somebody at the bun factory to make sure that what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. It's somebody at the hardware factory. He's got to talk to the Canonical at the software factory and make these things work nice. So anyway.
Well, I think it was Steve that shared on MeWe that the Kingston 240 gig. I think that's the same one that came with this machine is now $30.
$30, yeah.
The one thing I would caution you on those is look at the read-write speeds and the overall life, the IOPS and stuff like that. That's what I always look at to pick a drive. And then I also look at some of the reviews. The reality is I don't put a ton of stock in all the reviews because there's, they could be, some of them could be bought, who knows, whatever. But look at the specs of them when you're trying to decide on this hardware too, because even though just because it's an SSD doesn't always mean it's going to be fast. And I think you can attest to that, Steve, too, because that 32 gig is probably not the fastest thing in the world. And then it was the same thing with these hybrid drives. Everybody thought they were getting an SSD. What they were getting was SSD like memory type flash. So what it is the programs that you tend to load the most frequent, it kind of remembers that, and then it'll load it quicker. But it's not. It's a NAND flash. It's not really the same thing as a true SSD.
Right.
So, and you pay a little bit more for that drive. So,
I wish we had Tim here, Tim F, because he's got. I think he has a couple of Chromebooks, and if I recall, they've been about as flawless as possible. As flawless as possible for Linux machine, but I mean that again. I mentioned that before, but that's an example of a Linux standard that works.
I got one other thing I'd like to interject here.
Yeah.
My biggest, if I'm going to say I have a true concern about Microsoft and Linux, is because of the advancements that have been made already, and the direction that Microsoft has taken with, basically using us as the product, and now they're supposedly so much in love with Ubuntu after they were a cancer in their eyes at one time, is we meaning Linux community, whoever needs to get this to the marketplace first, because I still have a feeling that you are going to eventually see, and in the not so distant future, a Microsoft Linux distribution somewhere along the line, and it's going to be for the purpose of still being able to mine your data,
right?
And that's going to taint it for the rest of the Linux companies that may be trying to do that, because human nature are going to assume everybody's the same. That is my biggest concern with this. That we really need to try to push somehow, some way, somewhere, to see if we can get. I don't know if it's just people like us being a voice and contacting a manufacturer and just berating them with this and saying, here's what you need to do. We want you to do this. What would it take? What would you need for support? How do we do this? Talk to Canonical. I don't know. Alan Pope is a good place to start.
Yeah. He was on this morning briefly for that quick show I did this morning, but it has to start somewhere. Yeah. And I think he said they've even talked about it, but well, how far did the talks go? And was it talked about before this headache that is Windows 10? Was it talked? I mean, I don't know. It's all I know is there's a market for it. Windows 7 usage went up last month, which is unbelievable when you think of it. But people don't like. There were a lot of people don't want Windows 10. They just don't.
There's some horror stories that go with Windows 10. And my other second cousin, she's going to college too, and she's into artwork.
Okay.
I mean, really deep artwork of all kinds of stuff and everything else, and Adobe this and that.
Yeah.
Well, she had worked 4 hours on a project for school and then incrementally back it up. And Windows 10 decided to do an update in the middle of her work, and she lost all her work.
Yeah.
Well, there is one other answer possibly here, and it might be right here plain in front of us. And that's System 76. They're already there. It's just, okay, what do we need to take to get your machine out there in an entry-level part, not just the price point you're at? Can you produce a machine for the masses?
Right.
Maybe it comes down to that they say, you get a funding campaign together and we'll do this or whatever, because they're already in place.
Yes, they are.
What's there already.
And I would be cool with System 76, but they don't have $400 machines in Walmart.
Well, that's my point. Is now maybe it's time to get talk to them or somebody get in front of them, or maybe Alan. I don't know, because even though Pop! OS is their own spin, it's still Ubuntu.
The System 76 machines nowadays. What do they start off? They're
on the 6-something range, I think, for the lowest. It was. I don't know if it still is. I haven't looked in a little bit.
I saw an article today where it looks like Microsoft is already trying to compete. They have Windows Lite. They're working on a Windows Lite system they want to compete directly with the Chromebook.
Well, they do. They have Windows S, which is a stripped-down Windows 10 without all the bloatware in it that will run on something like that.
Yeah, this one's called Windows Lite.
They're just doing some name changing.
Think about this too, though. Here, and we've talked about this before, and I brought it up, and I almost forgot it after just saying what I did. Maybe the reason too, part of the reason that you're paying a little bit more for the System 76 machines is just the discussion we had earlier about support. They do have some phenomenal long-term support for the machines, software and hardware.
Yeah.
So you're paying for it more or less up front.
Sure. I'm looking
Does that solve the problem of the entry-level machine?
Well, I mean, it's kind of leaving the realm of Ubuntu, but Manjaro does have a line of laptops as well. Problem is they're only based in Europe, and you can only get them in Europe. But they do exist, and I think they're kind of in that price range if you run like a converter from euros. So I mean, I guess they have the resources too. Just got to bring them over here.
That'd be nice.
I'm actually at the System 76 website now. Their cheapest machine is $639. Yeah, that's out of range. Yeah. That's not going to work. Yeah, I'm sure the machines are great and the support is great, but you know what? The consumer will say, "So what? It's Linux. I'm not going to spend that much." That's just the reality.
Yeah.
You know, especially when Chromebooks start at $200, Windows machines start at 300. You know, you have to get it down to starting point of $400. You know, adequately spec'd. You know, so it works out of the box. It's going to work for at least 5 years. After that, you know,
and like Joe has said before, along with that $400, it's got to include some extra money for advertising. If you can't advertise the machine, it's worthless.
Right. And it's got to be physically in stores. It just has to be, so the consumer can touch it, feel it, look at it. Maybe have a Windows machine side-by-side comparison, so they see with their own eyes. It's not, you know, magic tricks. This is how the operating systems do the updates. This is how this will work in your house.
Right, because you can advertise it all you want on TV or whatever, but if you can't actually go and play with it,
right,
nobody's going to buy it. Well, you know,
well, Walmart's really kind of got their knickers tied up at the moment with the machines they sold this past Christmas, because they charged an awful lot of money for some awful skimpy machines.
Yes, they do.
Well, the fact that 10 years ago Walmart was even considering, and they did carry a Linux machine, says a lot. You know, I mean,
I was watching QVC this afternoon, and they were doing HP laptops.
I saw that.
It made me think.
Yeah.
Guys, what do you think? Carmine, QVC, the Ubuntu machine.
This is the Total OS Ubuntu machine. You know, the HPs, forget about it. Okay, we'll just forget about it now. You can buy it later. Yeah.
With Guido standing behind him.
That's
like
right.
This.
We'll have Guido like this. You're going to buy this machine, aren't you, pal?
Okay, who's ready for Shark Tank?
It only comes black.
Well, there you
and
go.
You're like black.
Maybe I should go to Shark Tank, because I would understand their language. They would try to insult. I said, "Pal was born in New York. Forget the insults, okay? Forget about it." So,
well, this is how I would advertise it. I would put them in front of everybody. I'll put a Windows 10 machine here, a Ubuntu machine here, and I would sit somebody here with the Windows 10 machines. I'll sit at the Ubuntu machine and challenge them to an update race.
But you know what? You know, Steve, QVC would be a good place to start. It can't cost that much, because you could do that as a test before you put them physically.
And it would be sent back the first time someone tried to put a Windows program in it.
You could have, like, you know, like set up the Ubuntu special on QVC, and you could have an agreement where QVC will get their cut for the 1 hour out of the machine sales or something. Like, you can have a comparison. You can have a Windows 10 updates. Here's the Ubuntu. Look how fast Ubuntu is. This is what a Linux machine can do, cannot do compared to Windows 10. And you can explain it as you would to a newbie. Sure you can. You can just show this, okay, look, this is the updates, here we go. Ubuntu, checkbox wins. Firefox, emails, done. You know, play music videos, done. Okay, games, some games, done. You know, and go down the list. And then you can say, okay, now to be honest, this is what it won't do 4K video. I mean, like, it wasn't built for that. You know, it won't do Adobe or whatever stuff like. But if you're up front and you say, look how fast this updates, and guess what? Virtually no malware. Spy, it's just not there. No spyware. Of course, once you get on the web, you know.
Your work.
It
won't reboot in the middle of your work either.
It won't interrupt your thesis on
There's a lot of discussion right now in the chat about System 76 being overpriced, and you could build one cheaper. And sure, you could build one cheaper, but you know, it's like Dan said too. They're looking at the hardware itself right now. They're looking at the cost of what you could do something for. We're talking about something that, to get it into the marketplace, comes at a cost. It's not just about the cost of the machine itself and making the profit on that, but you have to build in the cost of getting it out there, the word out there, and everything else that comes along with it, the infrastructure and everything else to get it there.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with the fact that System 76 is overpriced. I just think they don't have the price point level that we're talking about here to get it into the marketplace for the everyday user. Now,
Right.
even if it went up into the 450 range, I think you still would get people. But you start going much past that, you know, because I'm telling you, when kids go to college, the 600 plus or more or $1,500 computers, they're selling. I mean, people, they all want the Apples, they all want the MacBooks. They're buying, you know, my son bought a $2,700 MacBook Pro. I split it with them to help him alleviate some of the cost when he got into school for what he was doing. So, you know, but the everyday mom and pop, grandma, young kids coming in, whatever, you know, even in the schools, getting in the school system, you know, whatever, you know, that's the market that we got to hit. And that's the point we're trying to make here, to talk about just, you know, them being overpriced. That's not what this is about. This is about being able to produce something that you could still have enough value to profit from, or profitability for them and value for the consumer, to be able to make it worthwhile.
Yes.
And I can't believe for 1 minute that, you know, and I hate to say this, the only other way of possibly doing this is like everybody else, is you start putting cheaper components in it. Now, do you have to do that with everything? Not necessarily. There's trade-offs to it, whether it's a smaller drive or that kind of thing, to still get maybe a better quality drive in there, that kind of thing. So it's what you look at. But when you're asking a company as a whole to do this, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to put maybe the lower, like I mentioned earlier, the lower end i3 or i5, or they're going to put the, you know, the drive itself might be a smaller base, or they'll go to a spinning drive that isn't going to, you know, be as popular or whatever. I mean, because the reality is, how many people open up and see what components are actually in there? You know, Dell, I got to give them credit, if nothing else. I've opened up enough of their computers, their laptops and stuff, and they always had, you know, brand name in there. Is, for the most part, it was Seagate, or it was Western Digital, or something like that. Usually Seagate. And even there was a point when Seagate even got a bad rap for a while, and they've kind of turned that around, and they're doing really well. I mean, one of my oldest SSDs in here right now is a 240 gig Seagate. That's from 2013. So, you know, I just think the problem with consumers is they don't look at the bigger picture. They don't know what a business has to go through to get something out onto a market.
They look at the price. If I buy it, will it work? And that's it.
Right.
You know, and I guess to a point that's fair on their aspect of things.
Ubuntu is still it's creeping out there. The fact that I have a second cousin that's going to college and they want him to do his schoolwork on Ubuntu on a USB stick.
Nice.
That's something.
There's
128 students that all have to do this for this semester at this college.
Interesting. And that's required.
I understand it's not just this college, it's all the affiliates too.
Wow.
And that's why I brought it up before we started.
Right.
Well, and that's the other thing, you know, I was instead of typing it. Yeah, you could build your own machine, as I said. You can, and you could save money. But you're also your own support too.
Right.
Remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what to do, where to turn, you know, everybody uses YouTube and Google nowadays, but you know, sometimes you need that immediate answer because something's gone wrong. You know, where do you turn? So again, that's part of the price you're paying, you know, to a bigger company.
Yeah, I hate being my own support. I hate when I don't call myself back.
Yeah.
Well, something goes wrong.
My son was asking me about building a computer for his, you know, him or maybe even his girlfriend or whatever. And now they're talking more serious about doing it. But he goes, well, the thing I'm worried about, he says, if I need something or something goes wrong, he says, you know, who am I going to call? I'm looking at him. I say, are you serious? I said, you're asking the guy you're going to call is what's going to happen. So, you know.
Yeah, my son, when he has problems with his, you know, who are we going to call, Dad? I'm like,
you know, one thing about this, if a customer does call Ubuntu support, please not let it be in Bangladesh. Nothing against Bangladesh or India, you know, but it could be like, you know, someone from New York. Thank you for calling Torses Ubuntu's tech support. How can I direct your call? Something as American as that, you know, friendly. Hi, Switch. Welcome to the stream.
And do not tell them to RTFM.
That's the worst joke anybody could play on somebody right now.
Yeah. So it has to be English, even if it's from the UK with the British accent. I'll take that. Good day, sir. How can I help you? You know,
like it's rare that I get an error.
Boots.
It's rare that I get an error that forces me onto the Arch forums, but when it does, it's a pain in the butt. Those people are like, I love the distro, but those people are elitist. They
can find anything for Ubuntu that's clear as day to fix it.
I can hear somebody call process hotline now. I can't get my Adobe Photoshop. I loaded and that's my whole system. It talks. Dude, boss, what are you doing? You're not supposed to.
What's the matter with you? Hey,
I told you to use the GIMP.
Okay, or we could have the support out of Austria, the German like Austria. Thank you for calling Ubuntu. How could I direct your call? Oh, that sounds friendly. Oh, what did you do, you stupid? Oh.
Well, but that does happen though. That does happen because I transitioned one of my buddies to Linux, Linux Mint, mind you, and I specifically told him, like, listen, apps don't install the same way on the system as they did on Windows.
Yeah.
If you want to find something, let me know and I'll walk you through until you get the hang of it, right? So I put myself out there. I'm not just like throwing him out into the wild. He calls me up like a week later, tells me this machine sucks. It won't do anything. I go over to look at it. His downloads folder is full of executables.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I told you.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll get that in my father-in-law's computer.
Wow.
Yeah, most of the distros nowadays won't open anything up, thank God. I mean, you'll download and they'll sit there in a folder for the most part, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So.
Oh, but he tells me nothing installs on it.
Yeah,
that's one thing they would have to emphasize in the advertising.
Yeah.
No executable files.
Or in the intro video. In the intro video, it's like Ubuntu has that software center. Just like direct them there, like here.
Right, advertise
search here.
How does Apple handle that?
How does what?
How does Apple handle that?
It's got the App Store.
Yeah.
They do have an app store, and I think they use .dmg files to install.
Yes.
Yeah, and like if memory serves me correctly, you get the DMG and it has the actual application in it. You just drag it into your application folder and boom, it's installed.
It's actually very, very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give Apple credit in some areas. Mac OS is a pretty decent.
Yeah, but the worst part is
system.
If you think about it, it's built off of Unix, which is exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the most part, it's the base core file system. So
Apple has.
I think it's based on a BSD, if I'm not mistaken, like free BSD or one of those BSDs.
Just remember, BSD starts with BS. No, I'm just kidding, but
in the chat, Esnix said we've been down this road before. Linux computers in Sears and Walmart. It's not a good idea. I don't remember Sears.
Walmart had the GOS, a Green OA. It was for $199.
That doesn't
yeah, and I think it was built by 2 monkeys and 1 orangutan at the time, you know. And it failed miserably. I even downloaded the OS and it was like, oh my God, why on earth? And it's bad. It leaves a bad taste. But a company that's established, has the resources, we use Ubuntu or flavors of Ubuntu. Canonical, started in 2004. They are still around. They've done well on the business side, and it can be done. Everex, that was the company that did it. Yes, Easy Nix, yeah. For
run through the list. I've got Linux Mint. What's everybody else on tonight?
Mate Ubuntu.
Mate Ubuntu.
I'm on Mate Ubuntu right now.
Linux Mint.
Oh, I'm on Arch.
Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's okay, Ben.
You got 7 people sitting here on Linux, one of them hosting this with all the software necessary, and it's doing phenomenal.
And most of us on Ubuntu, look, I will not be here, literally will not be here as a creator, content creator, YouTube personality, whatever you want to call it, if it wasn't for Ubuntu. I started in 2006, and back then there wasn't a lot of good stuff for like newbies on Linux. It really had not matured. In 2010, it still had not matured, and there still wasn't enough good videos on YouTube. So let me get it started with Total OS today, you know. And here I am still doing it because I can see the growth, I can see the potential, I can see where people are not happy with Windows 10, but they have it because they don't have a freaking choice, you know. Yeah, so you know.
But isn't that a testament to the power of Linux that we can all have these our different workflows, our different ways of doing things, and yet we all use the same system in different ways, and yet we all come together. And
well, yeah, and there's a lot of professional work being done out there on these machines already.
Yes,
you know, especially photo editing. And, you know, I mean, so to sit there and have the, we all know it's not perfect, but when you look at all the other stuff going on with Windows right now, is that perfect? I mean, I've said it before about Apple. You know, Mac. My son-in-law had 2 laptops get bricked down and doing the OS update. You know, and he literally had to make an appointment with their Apple Genie Bar or whatever you call it, drive all the way up 35 miles away. How many days later, when he needed to get, you know, he had events coming up now, and it's all that stuff. You don't have to do this here. You can literally actually support yourself, even for the newbies. Eventually, if they learn it, you know, if you have a little tutorial or whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here. I know we sound like broken records, but
let me go here in the live chat. I haven't checked how many people are watching. How many here in the live chat would buy a $400 Ubuntu desktop, knowing it was pre-built, no bugs, ready to go? How many would buy a $400 US Ubuntu machine approved by Canonical? Just say yes or no. And whether you buy it at, you know, Walmart or, you know, QVC, it doesn't matter. Just a certified Canonical Ubuntu desktop. Would you buy it at $400?
And I think even if you buy it and you don't like Ubuntu,
a lot of yes, less is
you can install something else on it.
Yeah. Jesse says you wouldn't buy a desktop for less than $2,000. Feel free to give Canonical more than what they want. I'm sure they'll be able to build the next machine with that. Yeah. Oh, there you go. A lot of yeses. No more than $400. Fair enough. Yes, Gordon Barlow. Hi. A lot of yeses. Canonical, are you listening? You know. So there you go. Yeah. All right. So let's get to wrap this up here. What time is it?
Did you ever find out where Canonical's based out of?
I think in the UK, right?
UK on the. Well, this morning, Alan Pope for Canonical, he's going to Malta for a meeting. Excuse me, the island of Malta. You know, but I don't know the exact place, but. Let's just say New York, okay? Because they need a USA headquarters.
We're talking about Ubuntu and stuff like that, and Canonical, and we don't even know where their headquarters is at.
Let's look it up. Oops. Somebody want to look it up? No, let me do it. I know it's in the UK, but
well, that's close enough.
London.
Yeah.
In London.
Is it London? Okay. Okay, all right.
That explains the peppermint, the mint, and all that. They're all on the same island.
Yeah. All right. Okay. There's a Canonical USA located in Boston.
Well, it was like a duh moment because Alan's from there, and Alan goes, "Well, when I get into work, and we're talking about the, you know," so it's like, "Oh, okay." You get into work, and he's over there. It's like,
yeah.
Really? So there's a Canonical in Boston. That's not that far from me.
Yeah, there's different outlet branches of it.
Okay, very good. Awesome. Yeah,
Great.
that's what it says. It is a subsidiary. Okay, very good. So there you go. Up in Boston, man. Hey, awesome. Jesse says, anyone wanting to spend under $1,000 get a laptop. I don't know about that.
It's it's personal preference.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I'm kind of getting sick of hearing about how the desktop is dead. Those people who say that have no clue, who aren't into gaming and the other end of the spectrum. Right. And all you have to do is look at all the manufacturers of all this hardware that's out there, and the cable mods and all these other companies, these spin-off companies that all complement
Right.
Yep.
It's not dead by any means.
No. Us people are getting old and blind and need bigger monitors, which require a desktop to power them.
I like desktops for the flexibility.
Yes.
And expandability.
Yeah, like my desktop don't even have the sides on it. I just got all the cables hanging out on the floor and
There
junk.
you go.
So I can plug and unplug drives and everything the way I want them.
Oh, that's a geek.
Yeah.
CFWW says 60 miles from Boston. Well, go see Canonical there. Knock on their doors. You know, have a sign up. Come on. You know.
Well, the CPU keeps my feet warm.
Oh, there you go.
A foot warmer. A combination Ubuntu desktop footsie warmer. I like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm on the western half of Massachusetts, so I mean, it'll be like a 3-hour drive for me to get to Boston, but I'm right there.
Okay.
You should look into getting an IC dock, Dan.
And well, actually, the case will hold 12 hard drives. It's the idea of unplugging certain ones when you're installing something, so you don't overwrite certain drives that got your backups and stuff on them.
If my tower could hold 12 drives, I'd probably have it full by now.
Well, the motherboard will only support 6 unless I stick this extra RAID expansion card in.
Okay.
And then it'll do the rest of them. But what I don't like about the expansion card is it interferes with the BIOS at startup. So it's like the computer's got to boot twice to start.
Huh.
So what color should this Ubuntu box be? Should it be orange and brownish or just plain black?
I think black with maybe orange accents would be all right.
Okay.
Nice and
I think that
glossy.
would work, yeah.
How about a white keyboard, too, so you can see it?
Yeah, that would stick out. Maybe have the orange logo Ubuntu kind of glow in the dark, too. Would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like a white keyboard myself on my laptop so I can see it.
Yeah.
We would need some kind of an Ubuntu theme song.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I just thought of something real quick. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm blue. My disposition depends on Ubuntu. It's just
Orange accent Micro Center. They are nice looking.
Okay.
And then there's commercials like what Android did or what Google did with Android. All the little cool little things that you do without really saying a whole lot.
Yeah. You could have a commercial with comparing Ubuntu with Windows, and you see the Windows machine, and the person clicks updates. First, you see him do this, then this, then this. Then switch to Ubuntu, clicks updates, done. Ooh.
Who does "Don't Worry, Be Happy"? He could sing the song in the commercial for Ubuntu.
Don't worry, be zippy, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
John says, have a tagline for the ads. You can with Canonical. Ha ha. I like that. All right, that would work. You can with Canonical.
Did you ever see? I have a little. It's almost like a crudely drawn sketch. I pinned it to the top of my PC page on Facebook. And it says, an update is available for your computer. The first guy sitting there on a laptop looks nice and calm and says, cool, more free stuff, Linux. The next one is, not again, Windows. The other one is, holy, $99, Mac. Oh, man.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, that should be the tag. It should say, the updates take less time than you go into the loo. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah.
The truth is, I haven't updated my iPhone in over a year because I'm afraid if I update it, they'll destroy it.
Yeah.
Well, I like the other one. Do you ever see the one with Steve Carell, from The Office? It says, I farted in the Apple Store and everybody got pissed. Not my fault. They don't have Windows.
Good one.
Yeah.
Hello, Jonathan C. Welcome to the stream. We're just about to end. Sorry, but you can watch this on repeat. How about a fun Easter egg? Easter egg for initial setup. But I'm not sure what you mean. Yeah. Well, final thoughts. So, Benjamin, final thoughts on all this for this topic for the Ubuntu desktop.
Well, I think that it can be done. I think that we just need to take the initiative. Um, I do think that for the time being, we'll have to take control of like what hardware goes in it, make sure it's all functional, make sure it works, and we'll see where it goes from there. I think GNOME should, like, unfortunately, I mean, like, it would be my last pick to run on my system, but I think GNOME should be the pick to put on it. Um,
Modified GNOME.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Sure.
But just because of the flashiness, I mean, it's no offense. Like, I love Mate, I love XFCE, and I would use them over GNOME in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But if like a new user comes to that from Windows 10 and sees that, well, they're gonna be like, "What is this? Windows XP? What is it?" They're gonna feel like they're going back in time. They want something flashy, something that's.
And that's GNOME, right?
And unfortunately, that's what we have to do. So that's what we got.
Okay, fair enough. Dan.
GNOME wouldn't be my first choice, but I did have a thought. Run a short video or something like that upon startup, and let the user choose the desktop they would like to try, and have them have that desktop start up for them so they can use it. And if they don't like it, give them the ability to switch to another one.
I guess you can have one or two choices to keep it simple. You can pick stock GNOME or GNOME 2, as it were.
Yeah, I think one of the other Arch distros, I had 3 different desktops installed in the background, and all I do is when I logged in was select one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that. I have a few desktop environments. I mainly
Arch does that good.
Yeah. Well, most distros that you build up from scratch would. Because you get the vanilla of each desktop environment.
Yeah, that's doable if you can have the person selected. I think Ubuntu would be a good choice. It seems to work great on the new hardware that's out there now. My hardware is less than a year old, and the Ubuntu
or have a built-in panel changer like the Mate, but it'd be 1 out of 2. You can have the GNOME 3 today's look or the GNOME 2 yesterday. Just go back and forth, something like that, maybe, possibly. So the customer chooses. Joe, what do you say? Yeah.
Well, like we said, my biggest thing is whatever happens, I think it needs to happen fairly soon here.
Yeah.
I am concerned that Microsoft's going to beat us to the table with it.
I think so.
I don't know that I necessarily agree about the GNOME flashiness, because there's a lot of people that don't like Macs because they seem confusing or whatever. I think if there's the possibility, which I know it's more work, but if there's a possibility of having 2 flavors of Ubuntu, one that's more Windows-like to give people that comfort level, which would be Mint probably, or something similar, or have the GNOME that might be more simpler, because I could see the GNOME being great for kids in schools and the touchpads if they could get the touchpad part of it down pat. So. And again, the hardware, it is, even though I cracked the joke about Father Bride and the hot dog factory, it is the truth. The hardware manufacturers that are going to support this and Canonical need to come together, which is how it would work anyway. And I'm sure that's how it's working, even with what's out there right now. Price point wise, I do think that you can, even in today's world, build a nice system with at least 6 or 8 gigs of RAM in there and still be affordable.
Okay.
Is a little more future-proof right now, even out of the gate, because as we're talking, who knows how long it's going to take to get to this point. 4 gigs is already starting to become the lighter end of things now. So I agree with what Benjamin said earlier.
All right. Paul?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I got to agree with Joe again that it's a matter of the hardware manufacturers getting together and, whoever's going to build the laptop. I mean, they're going to have to work together to make sure this thing works. You're not going to be able to, have NVIDIA on one machine and, Intel on another, because we all know what happens with NVIDIA. So there has to be cooperation there. There has to be teamwork. Companies working together to make this a reality. And,
one machine across the board, across continents, just one.
It would have to be kind of like almost like an Apple product, really. at least in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the hand that we've been dealt for now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Steve.
I think as much as I don't particularly like the GNOME desktop, I think it's a great choice. I mean, who almost today doesn't have an iPhone, an Android phone, or hasn't had a tablet, and GNOME is very similar to that. So I don't think it would be, going from Windows 10 to that, it would be difficult. I think it would be a decent choice to start out with, and as long as all the hardware was right, I think it would fly.
Okay.
Do you guys
Vince?
know?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Go, Ben. Yeah.
You go, Ben.
No. I was just gonna ask, like, do you guys know if there's still like a community edition of Ubuntu Cinnamon? Because I think Cinnamon would make a good desktop environment for.
Especially someone coming from Windows, yeah, it would be great.
Yeah, because they don't strip all the features. It looks like flashy, I think. And
Cinnamon's a Mint thing. They developed it. If Ubuntu's got Cinnamon, they got it from Mint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they got Budgie from Solus, so.
Yeah.
I think in terms of a desktop, I'm not entirely sure that going with something that just a Windows clone is, eye-catching enough for someone who's gonna jump to something different. Because the more I think about it, the more I feel that GNOME, for someone jumping from Windows to a Mac, if you're gonna have to learn Mac, you might as well learn GNOME. And GNOME is it's different enough from a Windows environment. It's different enough from an iOS or a Mac environment for it to be eye-catching enough. So it's not a bad choice. In terms of hardware, I would say that spec for spec, without a doubt, like Linux is going to run way better than any Windows machine, without a doubt. It's going to be inevitable that this is going to happen. It's like Joe said, it's just a matter of who's going to do it. I'm not too concerned that if Microsoft does it, but because that at least will bring more awareness,
True.
and people will know that. Hopefully, they'll learn that if Microsoft Windows Linux will run, then any distro will run. You just got to pop a USB in and it'll run.
Okay. Well, you know how I feel. I would say a modified version of GNOME would be fine. Like I have the dash to panel where everything, kind of like Windows 10, you could put the panel either top, everything at the bottom, left or right. Everything is on that one panel, so a newbie would know exactly where to navigate and maybe have a second extension. I would probably have the categories menu would be a good extension also, I think, for newbies. And those two extensions, some of that they don't break with updates, really would be just what you would need, is really all you would need. Besides the standard GNOME, desktop, GNOME shell. But I think those two extensions, I think newbies would be fine, in my opinion.
John in the chat, he's asking why not a version of KDE Plasma?
I don't think so. I believe the documentation isn't very good. Number one, it needs to be simplified. Number two, it might be too much, as far as that goes.
I found it overwhelming.
Is it a possibility?
Yeah, it can be.
Sure, but I think it's over. Right, it's a little bit too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get lost in Plasma.
Yeah, I mean, to move the panel, it's like 4 steps from the top, from the bottom. I mean, come on, it looks great, Plasma, and it's gotten lighter. It's gotten lighter over the last couple. I'm really, really, really impressed by the speed of it, but it needs to be simplified. Yeah.
XFCE ain't a bad choice either.
Right.
That's pretty easy to figure out.
Yes, I would have to say.
I think that the way that Manjaro configured XFCE, it makes it look a lot like Windows XP.
Well, they included OpenBox with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if they can implement like almost like a clone of what Manjaro's done with XFCE, that could be a winner.
Okay.
Well, MX Linux has the same XFCE with OpenBox. At first glance, they almost work the same.
Yeah, I've always looked at MX as being like Debian's Manjaro.
Yes, that's exactly my thought.
Well, on that note, let's get and end this. I want to thank everybody here on the panel who contributed to this informative discussion on what a standard Ubuntu desktop machine should be. So we agreed that it can be done. Will the powers that be do it? I don't know. It's pure speculation, but we are all visionaries like Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs would be proud of us.
Well, at the end of the day, if
Yeah.
they don't hear us, I mean, any one of us can buy like cheap ThinkPads, refurbish them, test them, and sell them with Linux on it.
Well,
Maintain
if
them.
all else fails, I'll send a couple of dead fishes to Canonical to send the message, but no.
In a bulletproof vest, of course.
Right, yeah, just to send the message, right. Anyway, thank you everybody here in the live chat. I'm going to end the stream for this special Ubuntu show number 4. We'll continue chatting here privately before we wrap this up for this evening. So, thank you for watching this. Thank you for watching Total OS today, and next week we'll do number 5 Saturday or Sunday during the day. I'm going to try and mix up shows between different time zones and do my best, not just for this show but the other live streams. So it'll be next Saturday or Sunday, probably during the day. Don't have a topic for that one. Maybe concerns from newbies, or maybe I'll pick a couple of comments, pros and cons about Windows and Linux, and maybe go from there with Ubuntu show number 5. So, yep. Thank you, Linux Stabler, Jonathan, Anna Rita, everybody here in the chat, and hopefully we'll catch you next week. If you need to reach me, you have my email. So, arrivederci.
Hey guys,
Goodbye, everyone.